Now, as you can tell from our picture here, there's a whole lot of muscles in this region, okay? So as I kind of use the application, you can actually see a little bit more of the muscle tissue that is involved. So as we look at the muscle tissue, we can actually see that by calibrating, and these muscles that control the hip actually propel the creature, so propel humans, so to speak, right? So what happens is, as this happens, if this becomes deconditioned through a sedentary lifestyle, well, the thing that's lying underneath also stops working, and the muscles stop working as effectively. So one of the ways that we treat people is through a coach to assess their body mechanics and put them through the push fitness protocols that can actually help them to get a calibration of the structures. Now, one of the things that we do also in this process is we look at the sitting issues. And tell me a little bit about what you do, Kenna, in terms of helping people with adjust their lifestyle or modifying their mobility issues.
So with their mobility, like I said, we use that app, and we also use Push Fitness. And the supplements really, really have a lot that come into play because, like I said, with that increasing the insulin sensitivity, what we're going to want to do with that is it's going to help to control the blood sugars. And you might not necessarily relate blood sugars to sciatica just yet, but like I said, everything is connected. So when we put our patients on a protocol and we have them controlling these blood sugars, it also helps control their inflammation, because that inflammation is caused by sugars and chemicals in the blood. And that's also what's going to then cause nerve damage to our body and our system. And then once we have that nerve damage going, we're going to see a lot more patients sitting down, which then relates to that lack of motion. And then we see a lot of patients coming in with sciatica.
Sciatica. So basically, we're going back to the same monster, which is called inflammation. Okay.
Right.
So inflammation is the deal. People that have sciatica will often tell a story of how it kind of looms with them. It's kind of like having this untrustworthy nerve back there that if they have stresses or or they go through emotional dynamics, it actually affects sciatica. So this threshold that activates the sciatica presentation could have even an emotional component to it. So we want to bring that up to light too as well, because a lot of people, they have normal lives, but under normal situations, they don't have the presentation. All of a sudden, suddenly, bam, they get an emotional, financial issues, family things, and all of a sudden the sciatica just flares. Where is that even logical, right? The key is inflammation, inflammatory response, stress responses, and those issues do create a almost like a perfect storm to create a predisposition for inflammation. So that's why we bring in the dietary components and the food so that we can start also eating better to prevent inflammation. Again, those are one of the things. So she also mentioned the issue of Push. Push is our fitness center where we actually put people through exercise protocols. And when we start putting people through exercise protocols, it's there to calibrate. Now, what's the biggest muscle in the body? Well, not too far from the anatomical structure. You can actually see here that in this particular area, you can see the muscles, and everybody knows that the glutes are the big muscles. So when you see this powerful muscle, if this muscle becomes decalibrated from a sedentary lifestyle, you're going to notice that you're going to have a lot of predisposition. So it's like a car with flat tires, right? So if the car with flat tires, it starts swaying and moving to the wrong side. Well, if it's swaying, you can imagine that it affects the axis and the axles and all that kind of stuff starts happening. Things like these happen, but in our human structure, there's a finely calibrated system here. Now, one of the things that a lot of people don't know and they don't think about is the lymphatic structure. Now, if you can see here, you can see the lymphatic. Now, those guys actually, it rides directly next to the venous structure as well as the arterial structure. You can see it here. So as you can see that progressing, you also look at the arteries. So if someone doesn't have an arterial system that is working well and they're sitting on this, you can actually see congestion occurring around the structures around the nerves. Now, there's a lot of nerves in here. So when you start looking at this dynamics, you start seeing that a person who is not using their muscles actually has an increased level of congestion. So as I remove these muscles here, you can see this picture, and I'm going to remove every one of them. You start seeing the noticeable dynamics of how complex the nervous system is. So over here, you can actually see the complexity of how those nerves function. It's amazing to see all the structures in here. So when you look at this, you can actually see the amount of influence that lack of movement would actually cause. It's almost like a traffic jam. Imagine sitting on this thing all day long, okay? Let alone be inactive. So one of the things we want to do is we want to be able to assess exactly what it is. And one of the things that we do is to calibrate the systems.